Because I overdose on everything. If you're supposed to take 5,000 vitamin C, I take 25,000. If you're supposed to take 20,000 units of vitamin D, I take 60,000. Everything is mega dose, but I only do it 5 or 6 days a week. Today's my day off, and this is just my traveling pills. There's so many pills, if you take them all at once, you're not hungry. We got a bunch of emails in from the meatheads. I told you, this is like a mousetrap. When they see all you also ran, they become more boisterous. They're good boys, and I should pat them on the head like a good dog, and I did 2 more deals or 5 more deals, whatever. But if you stay at it, if you keep swinging at the plate, you'll make it. Most kids stop swinging at the plate because of the crap they take from their family, crap they take from their kids. 6 months, get a job. 2 years, get a job. 5 years, get a fucking job. 6 years, you say, well, fuck, I better get a job. I stopped doing this a number of years ago. I used to say, okay, Persian man, 6 years, and then I call him, and which he's surprised to hear from me. He's embarrassed. I said, exactly how did you follow QLA? And then after about, this is a Trump exaggeration, 60 seconds, it's obvious he didn't. Yet he's in Reddit and all these things telling you how the program doesn't work. You can be assured 1,000% of the time when they say it doesn't work, it's they didn't work the program. We've got guys, I mean, literally, I use the example 80 IQ, 180 IQ, because we've had guys 70, 80 IQ that made it work. I mean, they're borderline retarded. I think if you don't have 140 IQ, you're retarded, but I mean, borderline retarded. And I've gotten it done. When you practice, I heard a couple of the guys disabled or disadvantaged, or what's a special need. Isn't that what you say now? Make it sound better? Special need. Fuck you and your special need. Anyway, I've had them tape what they say to the people. Hi, my name's Dan. What's yours? Have you ever considered selling your business? And they still do. And then we've got you. So remember that when you leave here tomorrow, if you decide not to go forward or whatever the reason. So far, from the last class, the only guy that's done shit is pig farmer. I've had a couple of emails. I'm getting ready to pull the trigger. I've just loaded the chamber. What does that tell you, person that wrote that? Not just one, a few. We had another one that attended the same group. She said, I'm sure most of this is in the gig, but I'd like a bunch of shit updated to 2020. Some of the templates you're gonna get are 20, 25 years old, and they haven't been changed because they don't need to be changed. Nothing's changed since 1993 except crowdfunding. That's the only thing that we have today that we didn't have in 1993. Everything else is exactly the same. Except now we've got a lot more money floating around, a lot more liquidity. We have a couple $1 trillion more liquidity than we did in 1993. They need to validate why they haven't done shit. Now you saw Mr. Carnegie last night, my virtual mentor. He was one of the first guys to use private detectives, but he was one of the first ones to use what would be considered a slime ball. Look in trash cans, go to ex-wives, follow them, catch them with their own wife. I won't say he invented because he didn't, but he was one of the first that felt no qualm when he was in the midst of many shitty things that he did. Came to Europe, holidayed in Europe, rode around Scotland about 30 miles from here, like he was a conquering hero. Down where he's from, you can hardly go by a street that doesn't have his name someplace. Little schools, churches, you name it, squares, etc. His mother wanted to be able to ride back in her carriage. There's 2 stories how he came to America. The one in that movie, I believe, is when he was 12 years old. But I like, there's another one. He was 7 years old. He stowed away on a ship and we're down in the belly of with a rat. I like that one better. Success leaves clues. I've been saying that all week, haven't I? And there's nobody in this room other than myself that's even remotely close to any of the people you've seen. A lot of you will be able to relate. Unfortunately, but you'll be able to relate to them. And superstar though. I keep saying, even though I haven't showed you any of the icons that we've studied a little bit about, they're ruthless, but they're not little church mice. They're not scared of their own shadow like you. We're gonna show you at least one that's scared of his own shadow, but still became extremely wealthy.
And maybe there was other folks that he surrounded himself with that were...
Stop. He surrounded himself not with the kind of shitbags you are. Remember, you're the average of the 5 people. And just compared 1 or 2 of the guys that Mr. Carnegie surrounded himself with and the guys you spend most of the time on the phone, texting, no comparison. He used to steal information off the teletype. When his mentor needed help, he put his foot on his head and make sure he drowned. Not literally, but figuratively. But it also points to, you have all this almost instantaneous information. And what the fuck do you do with it? Fuck all. I have 2 cell phones. I have a toll-free Asian number, I have a toll-free US number, and I have a toll-free Europe number. Those phones were put in place 20 plus years ago. So my kids didn't have the excuse to not call me because it was costing them too much. In 24 years that I've had those 3, I've gotten not 1 call, not 1. Now we just got rid of the Asian number last week. We had to search out who was even paying the bill the last 15 years. We finally figured out who was paying the bill. Of course, it was one of my entities, but I don't carry phones. And if I do carry them, they're turned off. The only reason I have them is I get in an accident, so I want to dial 999 999 or 911. And somehow I run a worldwide organization with no fucking cell phone. My children have to call and make an appointment to talk to. Everybody I talk to has to make an appointment. They have to send me an agenda. What the fuck do you want to talk about? But I'm not going to talk to any of you, so don't bother calling. When you leave here tomorrow morning, adios, motherfucker. If you see me at an airport, please don't say hello. I got nothing to sell you. You're on your own. The point I'm trying to make is when you start following the weekly reports and you see hour by hour, you list what you do, you will be stunned how little productive time. There's about 70 some questions, and if you don't do what you say, instead of no, I cunt it out. When you look at your report and you've got 60 of 73, I cunt it out. Some of you will have all I cunt it out because you didn't do any of it. I can see you're already trying to rationalize, well, he must not mean this, he must not mean this, and you wonder why you didn't do a deal. What's the highest performance thing you did? Your partner, your siblings, your mother, your father, and when it's fuck all, fuck all, fuck all, fuck all, same with the report. I didn't do any of those things. How could I ever imagine that I'm going to be able to do a deal?
You never paid any dividends to the shareholders?
Fuck the shareholders.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. And do you think that the CEOs really care about the shareholders? Only in recent years do they care because they have such shit about it now. For the last 15, 20 years, shareholders' rights and that kind of thing. You don't steal from the shareholders. If you think these guys are interested in their fucking opinion, you're crazy. They couldn't give a fuck less. I was the first person, allegedly, back in the day, to pay himself $1 million for a public company CEO. I got notes, calls from all the big guys from the 80s that were based here in the UK. Thanks, Dan. You broke open the ceiling for us. It went from like 800,000 to 8 million in compensation. He was surrounding himself with where he wanted to be. He was in a form smelling the leather. I remember as a young Army officer going to the embassies and seeing not just general officers and admirals and stuff, but ambassadors and rich people. In Europe, if you're an ambassador, you're normally wealthy. In the United States, the only place they make you an ambassador when you're fucking poor. And an ambassadorship is repayment for something you did politically for their parties. I saw all these people driving up in limousines, etc. That's where I need to be. And I told you that I'd never seen a million. I'd never heard the word growing up a million. Never. I walked into the Ramstein Officers Club, which is one of the great officers clubs. Even today, they don't have officers club now because they allow enlisted men to mix with officers, which I think is wrong. I don't think I know it. But I walk into the Ramstein Officers Club and I see a guy that I know at the bar. They're 3 deep, just ordering drinks like. Senior officers were sitting over here, and I said, well, why is everybody drinking so hard? He says, Captain so-and-so inherited $1,400,000 and drinks in those days, 15 cents, 25, 50, 75 cents. This was 1967, 68. And I said, could you write down $1,400,000 on a napkin for me? I still remember him doing it. You know, napkins are a little wet, and so the letters kind of smudged because 1,400,000, 000. That is the first time I'm a 21-year-old young Army officer that I'd ever seen $1 million written down. And of course I said, well, then I better drink up. We might run out of money here because we weren't gonna. I think his total bar bill was like 15 grand. I mean, this is drinking 3 drinks a minute. Bomb. I mean, you know, like in a college fraternity deal. You know, they were just guzzling it down. A few weeks later, I won an award for, they didn't call it IT, computer. I figured out a way to save $3 million over 10 years, the way we handle our computers. And the computers in those days were big, huge, looked like cars. Now, for somebody that's not tech, how I came up with that idea, I have no idea. But it was about moving them. We used to use all the computers that backed up NATO were on a train. We were constantly moving them 24/7 around Europe, Western Europe, free Europe. And invariably, when they were on the train, they'd get knocked out of whack because they're going over tracks. I came up with an idea that we would insulate, instead of having to have the computer guys, which weren't called computer guys in those days, readjust the fucking things, you know, when they were sitting for 2 hours. And so I got an award, and that award was a war bond. They used to call them war bonds. I don't know if they call them war bonds now. And there's some pictures on my website of me accepting this award from this general officer. So I'm at the Officers Club now, back in my own base, and I'm drinking at the bar. And I have a 2-star general, General Vaughn, on this side of me, and a 1-star general, Roy Atterbury. He's the one that used to call me a wetback Mexican. Sorry piece of shit. The Army's a sorry fucking place where a wetback Mexican like you can become an officer in this man's army. He didn't even know my mother was illegal alien. Otherwise, he was from Texas. He would have really got off of me then. So General Vaughn says, Danny, you ought to buy the drinks for us. Now, when a 2-star general tells a first lieutenant that he should buy the drinks, and you find out why later. So after I bought a couple of drinks, I said, General Vaughn, why should I buy the drink? Normally you wouldn't even ask. You guys wouldn't even ask one, but I asked. And he said, that big money award we gave you, Army gave you a couple of weeks ago. And I said, General Vaughn, with the greatest respect, that was a $50 war bond. If I keep it 30 years, it's worth $50. Right now it's worth about $6.75. And then he said the magic word. A young man like you could get rich in the civilian world. And a bulb went off over my head, like in a cartoon. Rich, civilian world, Danny Pena. I was out of the Army in 6 months. Otherwise I would have retired as senior officer. I was out of the Army in 6 months because I connected the dot. Unlike you meatheads, you'd be still spreadsheeting that comment. I've always pulled the trigger, whether it was jumping on a pair of tits or a deal. I always was willing to take the risk to pull the trigger. I was out of the Army in 6 months because I was just looking at my military file because I was requested to stay in as a 5%er, meaning I was in the top 5%. And so I got out of the Army, and I tell you don't need to go to university. The only reason I finished college after flunking out so many times is that my mother, nobody had ever gone to college on her side of the family, which was not a good reason. It took me 2.5 years to finish a 4-year degree. Yeah, some of you think you were poor. You weren't poor. As Sally would say, you fuckers lived in the lap of luxury. Sally lived in a caravan, 6 people in a caravan, which is a miniature mobile home. Caravan was not as long as this platform, 6 people. Sally's mother says Sally can't remember, shouldn't be able to remember. Sally can tell you what the curtains look like because you never forget. Just like you never forget abuse, no matter how old you are, you never forget. Carnegie said the worst thing you can do is leave your children with money. That's one of the reasons why our kids aren't going to get any money from us. And we're just going to, rather than give it to the kids, I'll burn it.
He was extremely hungry.
Just like you're not. Irony of it, some of you really think you're hungry, but you're not. You're not even remotely. Pig farmer is hungry. The real hungry people have already started building their boards. Not in this room. You don't know what hungry is. You have some sort of plan B, C, or D or something.